Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I hope that you had a great lunch. So my name is Guillermo Torres. I'm a manager at Axis Corporate, a management consulting firm focused on financial services. This is my second year as a volunteer, and as a panel captain, it has been my privilege to help organizing today's discussion on how organizations are reaching and expanding the reach of digital innovation. Today's moderator is Dr. Nils Fonstad. Dr. Nils earned his PhD in the MIT Sloan School of Management. He is a Master of Science from the MIT Technology Program, Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, and BA in Film Studies from Cornell University. Dr. Nils is a research scientist at MIT CSAR, and he's based in Madrid. So he's now focused on how organizations from Europe and Latin America are basically maximizing the business value and minimizing the impact from digitization. So please welcome Dr. Nils Fonstad.
Good afternoon. I'll ask my panelists to come out with me as well. How's everyone doing? Good? All right. Have a good lunch? Excellent. Good, good, good. So just since we're right now just finished lunch, I'd like to get into some exercise for all of you. And with one question to start off. How many of you would say, with a show of hands, how many of you would say that your organization is spending more on digital innovation compared to, say, 3 years ago? Show of hands, total amount spent on digital innovation is increased in the past 3 years. Now, keep your hands up. This is the exercise part, all right? So how many of you would say that your organization is doing a great job of tracking that total spend? That you have, whoop, okay, there some hands are going down there, that you have a holistic view of that total spend. And then finally, you've got a few hands are still up. How many of you would say you're doing a great job of tracking the impact of your total spend on digital innovation? Well, your experiences are very similar to those of companies that I've been studying in the past year now. A lot of companies are spending more on digital innovation, yet they don't track the total spend. They struggle to get a coherent view of that spend, and even more are struggling to understand the impact of that spend. A lot of companies are embarking on a very important journey, on a journey, a digital innovation journey, yet they have very little guidance as to whether or not they're headed in the right direction, whether their investments are taking them in the right direction. And so one of the things we hope to do in the next hour with our guests and with some of the insights that I've developed is to help firms guide themselves in these very uncharted waters called digital innovation. So what I wanted to do first is, the research I'll be showing is thanks to our sponsors and patrons at the center. So I want to just acknowledge their support. And we'll also be getting insights from the panelists, who I will introduce briefly in a few minutes. But before that, I just wanted to kind of set the stage. We've recently collected data from over 200 firms with regards to how much are they spending in digital innovation, and how do they distribute that total spend across 4 types of digital innovation. The first 2 are internal facing, and they consist of business operations. So these are innovations that are trying to enhance productivity, for example, operational efficiency, et cetera. And then the employee experience. To what extent are we empowering our employees to be more innovative? The other 2 are external facing. So we've got a whole set around customer facing innovations, and these traditionally have been split up into new products and services and the customer experience. And these innovations are trying to generate more revenue per customer and new revenue per product and service. The others are new business models, and so this is about generating new revenue from new types of customers. And if we look on average, about 60% of the average spend on digital innovation is allocated to external-facing innovations. The other interesting thing is not all firms are investing in all four types. We find that, for example, with new business models, only 45% of firms are investing in new business models. The most popular is business operations. Most companies, as they embark on their digital innovation journeys, they start with business operations. And so if you look at the portfolio of many firms in their initial stages, it's either very heavily weighted towards customer-facing and business operations. And you see that the least two popular are employee experience and new business models. The other thing that we did that I think is really cool is we looked at, well, is there a difference between high performers and low performers with regards to total spend and with regards to allocation to their portfolio? And we basically found that total spend on digital innovation is not a competitive differentiator. What does differentiate top performers from low performers along a variety of business outcomes is their portfolio, how they allocate their total spend. And so this slide gives you a flavor of the kind of insights that we're now developing. You'll see on one side the different kinds of outcomes that we've been looking at. So innovativeness, that refers to how innovative are your products and services, and how innovative is your customer experience relative to competitors. And it turns out that the most competitive, the most innovative, they have a portfolio that is about 45% customer-facing. So that's not surprising, right? The key category in their portfolio is customer-facing. That's what we'd expect. But just as important is that this winning portfolio, the competitive portfolio this is the average portfolio of the top 25% of firms that are innovative. Their average portfolio reveals that not only is customer-facing their most important category, but that actually all four types are critical to competitiveness when it comes to innovation. And if we look down the different rows at the different outcomes, we see that, in fact, the competitive portfolio, the average portfolio of the top 25% of firms, all four of these competitive portfolios consist of all four types of digital innovation. So now we're going to get a sense from the panelists of what digital innovation looks like in these three very successful companies that we have here on stage. I'm going to begin with Shamim. Shamim is the CIO for CarMax. Shamim, tell me, what does digital innovation look like at CarMax? And I should point out that one of the striking aspects about CarMax is that their Net Promoter Score is over 80. And what does it take to achieve such an amazing Net Promoter Score?
Thank you, Nils. Good afternoon, everyone. So, Nils, I have a very important title that most people don't realize besides the CIO. So I'm also a used car salesman.
I did not know that.
An honest one, actually. And I do have a license to sell you a car in the state of Virginia, so if you're ever interested. In any case, CarMax is the largest used car retailer in the country. And the way we founded our company was around the used car industry and all the challenges the industry had, right? People did not want to get up and say, okay, I want to go buy a used car. They dreaded that experience. So our whole company is founded on transforming that industry and bringing honesty and integrity in the mix. So from the beginning, we have been very much a customer-focused organization, and we've been very innovative. Our technology played a critical role in terms of how we did our business. How we price our car, because we're no haggle, fixed price. That was the key. How we find our inventory, what kind of offer we make, information we give to our associates. All of those things have been very critical. Now, the reason our Net Promoter Score is so high, higher than one of the top global brand, which I will not mention the name, is because we never deviated from the key focus on our customers. Right? That is the key. And what happened over the last few years, we realized that in order for us to remain at the top customer-focused organization, we need to innovate faster. So that's when the whole digital transformation came into play for CarMax. And we use a term internally called chalking the system. So we took a very successful industry leader a couple of years ago and said, OK, we're going to really disrupt ourselves in a big way, leveraging data even more with the speed and innovation to continue to make sure that we can drive that experience. So we'll talk more about that, but that's what digital transformation means for CarMax.
And one of the things we will touch on is the fact that for a company that's achieved such a high Net Promoter Score that is so competitive in terms of customer satisfaction, a critical piece of your portfolio has been the employee experience. And when we talk about what it takes to really develop and foster a culture of digital innovation, we'll talk about the employee experience there. We're going to go now. So CarMax is next year going to turn 25, right? Monsanto is a little slightly older company, right, Jim?
400.
Tell me a little bit about digital innovation, why it's important to Monsanto, and what does it look like today?
So for those that don't know Monsanto, we're an agricultural-based company. We have presence in about 70 countries around the world in areas like corn, canola, cotton, soybean, plus we have vegetables and seeds that we produce. And so it's a really important supplier into agriculture for the crops that are eaten by animals that we eat, as well as by humans and vegetables and whatnot. Digital transformation is really important. Agriculture is probably the oldest industry on the planet. It's been around for thousands of years, and I'd say over the last half decade, it's been tremendously transformed through digital, through information technology, through data science, so machine learning, deep learning, we're applying through IoT. And you think about what actually goes on in the farm today. There's about 7.5 billion people on the planet today, growing to 9 billion people by, I think, 2050. And there's only so much arable land, there's only so much inputs like water that you can use, and you want to minimize things like fertilizers and pesticides and other things. So we've been able to use technology to transform agriculture to substantially increase yields and output while also substantially reducing input. And we've also applied that internally in the company about how we identify seeds that will grow in different conditions like drought or to fight disease or to have higher output and higher yield while reducing inputs for our growers and ultimately for making a more sustainable product for the world. So a really important effort. I'll talk a bit around how technology transformed it, but I can tell you in every aspect of Monsanto and agriculture, both internally in the company, our processes, our people, our customer interactions, plus what we're doing with digital agriculture on the outside. And think about this nexus of science, data, technology, transforming an industry of agriculture, and that's what digital transformation means for Monsanto.
Can you elaborate on, is one of the categories that you saw in portfolios is new business models. Is that relevant to the digital innovation journey at Monsanto?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So you think about all the data that we collect internally. We probably have the largest genomic library in the world around corn and soy and other things, and we also have a lot of information internally because we grow our crops, we grow our products. So we work in a lot of fields around the world, over 1 million acres that we grow crops in, and we think about all that data that we collect. We've been now able to look at that and how do we make a grower more effective and efficient? So we put together digital agricultural tools. We have something called a smallholder platform in places like India that allows, we have over 4 million growers on that platform that gives them insights around commodity prices, around agronomic practices, around disease, and to identify that early. And it helps them go from sustenance farming to profitable farming. And our large agri-holders, places like Brazil, or Argentina, or the US, or places in Europe, we have a platform called Climate that gives things like harvest advisors, nitrogen advisors. So we're using data and technology to be able to determine how much nitrogen in the soil, look at models, look at leaching in the soil, and tell our growers through a very visual user interface how much they need to apply, and they can actually reduce their inputs but maintain output. That's become a whole new business model, and think about that as a closed loop. We take our research data, our supply chain data, our customer data, we feed that into our grower digital ag solutions, and then that feedback comes back that says we have new insights about how things are performing in different conditions. And if you think about personalized medicine, Think about personalized agriculture. So for each and every grower, we understand their field, we map those fields, we have satellite imagery, we have IoT data collecting, and they get a personal script for what to plant, and how to best optimize their inputs and maximize their outputs.
We see that this is a critical success factor for competitiveness is not only investing in all 4 types, but really realizing synergies across the 4 types in the portfolio, and that's a great example of how it's done at Monsanto. Mike, at Topcoder, what does digital innovation look like there?
Sure. So for those who don't know, Topcoder, we are a crowdsourcing company. We have a community of 1.1 million designers, developers, and data scientists. And I actually have 2 answers to this question because there's digital innovation within the company, but we're often the catalyst behind a large organization that's looking to drive digital innovation within their organization. So let me first take the case of Topcoder because I often use to our CTO and our product development staff, we don't want to be the cobbler's son, right? Everybody knows that story. But when we look at, we're largely a management team and a group of people that have an engineering background. And we spent several years, focused on our business processes and kind of the left-hand side of your chart. And we realized that we definitely missed an opportunity on the customer-facing investments, right? And it actually took, as a 2-sided marketplace, to see companies like Airbnb and Uber and their rise, and to realize that, a lot of it is like, it's just easy. It's frictionless, it's easy. So we are focused mainly on the customer experience at Topcoder. How can you make building an application, a few clicks, right? How do you use cognitive capability inside of your app dev processes to make it faster for somebody and less friction in the process? How do you take a data science problem in genomics and allow that to be done by somebody that's not a PhD? Right. So those are the things that we're focused on now, largely. So we've moved our focus the last few years into customer facing. But on the client side, it's interesting because so we are often working underneath CTOs or chief innovation officers or CIOs within firms, and often given the charter of help us speed up our innovation, help us disrupt ourselves. How many times that terminology comes out. And I find in these programs, my opinion is there's a lot of upfront work that goes into what type of ideas can we come up with. But there's not enough that goes into actually executing on those ideas. So one thing that we've struggled with is how to get companies to realize they'll talk about failing fast, but many of them don't actually do it. Yeah. And that's something that we're spending a lot of our time just advising people on how you should think about innovation and how many swings of the bat do you need to hit that triple, right? That home run. And so I would say that I think companies are still largely on your left-hand side of your chart more than they are on the right-hand side of the chart. And to get to the right-hand side of the chart, you have to be experimenting a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Just a reminder to folks that if you do have questions, great, I see that you're now starting to introduce some questions, so please do so. So I want to switch now from investments to impact. Any of you, tell me some of a key factor that has helped you, say, at CarMax, Shamim. What's helped translate investment into impact?
I think the big thing is really in terms of how rapidly we're able to deliver capability to our customers and get the instantaneous feedback so that we can tailor and adjust our approach. So I'll give you 2 examples. One is now that we're operating in a very different fashion as a company, right? And again, I can get into some of the specifics. It takes us a matter of days now to do certain things to get in front of the customer versus what it used to take us months and sometimes years, or sometimes we couldn't even do it. So this amount of speed and innovation that is taking place is awesome. The two things that I mentioned, one is we deployed an online finance capability, right? So this is where our customers can go online, carmex.com, and apply for a loan and get approval and get all the way lead can be generated for the store. So that, through this iterative process, very rapid learning process in the new platform, they could do it very, very quickly. It took us a matter of a few weeks, and then eventually we were able to deploy to the whole country. And it's having a pretty significant, tangible business impact, at bottom line and the top line. Another one is we're piloting right now a home delivery. So if you are in Charlotte, North Carolina, you can be sitting on your couch watching New England Patriots play and sell your car and buy your car, and the car will be delivered to your home. So those type of innovation that we're able to deliver to our customers would not have been possible a couple of years ago. Now we can do those things. So we have multiple product teams. They're working on various activities and very rapidly innovating and iterating and really getting instantaneous feedback from the customers and fine-tuning those products.
And my understanding is that would not have been possible, say, 5 years ago, before you and the rest of the senior management team decided to shock the system, as you said earlier.
Absolutely. And part of the shocking the system was, again, the company was very successful. We were the market leader, and we are larger than the next three competitors combined. So that puts you in a kind of complacency mode. So when we looked at this about 3 years ago, we said, okay, we really have to change in a big way. So rather than taking incremental steps, which we're going to really shock the system. So we physically changed the layout of our offices. So we brought like marketing, operations, IT folks. They're co-located. They're part of very small product teams. We call it product teams. And they're given specific business objectives. They're not told to go do these projects. So they're not measured against output. They're measured against outcome. So, and what's happening is also those teams are empowered to take the steps to make that outcome a possibility. So by changing that, we have been able to really change the culture of the company and really enhance what we used to do. I mean, we always have been very innovative and entrepreneurial, but we have just taken it to a whole different level now by moving in this way.
And I think that's a key aspect is really motivating changes to business processes and to platform, motivating those changes based on how are we going to empower our employees, what they call their associates. And that seems to be a real key aspect. How about, Jim, at Monsanto, what would you highlight as a key change that you introduced to really transform and translate the investment into innovation, into impact?
Well, we try to tie all our investments to business outcomes. So it might be NPV of our pipeline increase. It could be cost of goods reduction or supply chain. It could be net promoter score lift or revenue lift in customer, or disruptive innovation that creates whole new operating models. So we kind of tag it across those. And I'll give you 2 examples in our supply chain space. So one, we have a sustainability goal to be carbon neutral by 2021. And our supply chain is a big contributor to carbon gases. Actually, agriculture itself is a big contributor to carbon gases. And so if you can do things like no-till in your soil, you don't release carbon footprint in the air, and therefore you're helping to reduce your carbon footprint. So as an example, some technologies we applied, so we move a lot of seed around the world. And so we did some machine learning models and some software and technologies to look at transportation of our trucks to distributors and dealers. And in one country alone, we were able to reduce 1.4 million miles of trucks off the road in a year and 2,500 metric tons of carbon by using transportation models and algorithms that help us towards our carbon neutral footprint by 2021. The same thing we've done in putting sensors, IoT information all over our manufacturing and our fields. We put little sensors in the back of semi-trucks. The sensor costs us $19 a month. It has a pressure, temperature, a GPS SIM chip in it. We could track trucks. When it's harvest time, trucks queue up at our distributors to offload, and they could be 3 or 4 miles long. And if you're in the middle of Brazil or the middle of the Midwest, you can get to 100 degrees, 110 degrees. Each truckload is on average worth about $60,000 a product. And if the truck's been sitting out in the field for a couple days, it gets really hot. So a little sensor, a $19 sensor connected into our IoT backbone that is then visual within the manufacturing plant. The plant manager sees where the truck is, sees a red light in the queue, said this truck's getting hot, move it from the end of the queue and offload it first. We've zeroed out seed loss by a $19 sensor and then doing our IoT back end and then communicating that and empowering, in this case, our manufacturing person to have control to make the decisions with better insight. And we've done that throughout all aspects of our organization, in research, commercial, supply chain, and that's also now exposing in our digital ag products. So it's really helped transform the business processes, but also the value creation with that investment.
And Mike, based on your experiences, both internal and as you work with customers, what would you highlight as one or two key factors that really help transform and translate the investments into impact?
What I love about that story is the carbon footprint part of it, because I think every organization has a responsibility. It's a lot easier to wake up in the morning if you're motivated at what you're doing. It's even better if you're motivated at what you're doing and it's helping the world be a better place. And it's one of the themes of Topcoder from the beginning has been, how do we have that type of impact? So I'm slightly changing your question to the world, and it's like, for us, there's two pieces, two-sided marketplace. We have to serve two sides. On the community, the 1.1 million people out there, we're democratizing talent, and I love to look at the stories of people that are funding their lifestyles. They may live in Venezuela, and we give them the opportunity to work for companies like Comcast and NASA and solve interesting problems. That's an impactful thing, providing paychecks to people that are in Africa to work on high-tech solutions. So we love that aspect of our business. And the other side, on the customer side, I think the biggest impact is when you can see somebody get something done that wasn't possible maybe a year ago, right? Maybe 6 months ago. And we just had an example where we have a part of our business, it's a small part of our revenue base, but it's somewhat the most fun part of the business. It's self-service. Okay. So it's geared towards small companies can come in and get access to our community and build applications. So one company came in, and it was a dental office in Arizona, and they wanted to build a cognitive application that would use artificial intelligence to diagnose x-rays. Typically, that's going to be out of the reach of a dental office. And I remember looking up, so somebody brought it up to me, and I'm like, it's kind of a cool idea. So I figured it was a big dental organization. That was one dentist. I think he had 8 hygienists, beautiful office in Arizona. And we just happened to have a partnership with IBM. We run a cognitive community for them. And we were able to build an application for them using Watson, using a corpus of data that already existed, running on an iPad for less than $50,000, right? In a matter of months. That would be several millions of dollars for somebody probably a year, 2 years ago. So I think that's the other thing that I love hearing those stories.
One of the aspects that seems to be a critical success factor is really as teams get empowered to innovate and experiment, giving them the tools to do so in an evidence-based way. So they're not just simply developing, not simply prototyping or coming up with great ideas, but really using data to help identify which ones to set aside and which ones to really focus on going forward. How have you gone about developing more of an evidence-based culture for your teams in your organizations?
I can answer that. So at CarMax right now, all of CarMax, IT, and basically as a company, we're running Agile. And there are different flavors of Agile. But for certain parts of our organization, we're running something called dual-track Agile. Okay. Dual-track Agile, these product teams have a discovery track where they're going through a lot of ideas. They can test it out in a matter of hours. And then there's a delivery track where they actually take some of those ideas, they have more meat into it, and then go into more production mode and try to test it out. But that's probably still a couple of weeks. So by doing that, we're able to sift through a lot of ideas. Now, these product teams have a product manager who, most cases, is not an IT person, maybe reporting to operations or marketing, have a developer, senior developer. It has a user experience person. It has a quality assurance. Also, most teams have data scientists and data analysts in there. So they're collecting data from customer interactions and also internal operational metrics and deciding, are these ideas providing the right level of return? And quickly they can then discard the ones that don't have as valuable and move on to the ones that are more valuable. So we're going through that very iterative process, deciding on where we should invest next.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I've got, so I think it's a cultural thing, I think. You know, it's like in our business, you know, often in our management calls or our weekly team calls, we'll kind of set the stage of, you know, don't worry if you mess up, right? I'd rather you take the risk and mess up than play it safe. And that's a challenging culture to push, and we're constantly having to kind of push our teams. You know, I'm a big person that believes in, you know, ask for forgiveness and not permission, and that's a culture that we try to push down to the individuals, you know, within the team.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, you know, a lot of people might not agree with that, but that's the way that that's the way that I see things get innovative. You know, it's just taking some chances.
We're a science IP-based culture, so by definition, you're always experimenting, it seems. But we've done a couple of different approaches. I repivoted the organization around internal platforms and put product teams that are diverse in those product teams. So a product team, it might be an operations platform that we have, and there's products in that platform. You have a data scientist, you have a human-centered design, you have a high-end engineer, you have a security person, you have the domain knowledge around that product or platform. And because you have the diversity, you're able to iterate in a DevOps model, in a co-development kind of way, and you're always proving and assessing. We develop roadmaps for our activities. So we see where we need to go, and we're kind of always iterating on it. But we also created a separate group I call a digital outreach group. It's really looking at kind of the bleeding edge technology of things that are emerging. So as an example, every year we meet with over 250 startups. We do about, on average, 30 proof of concepts. We, on average, internalize 5 capabilities or technologies. It could be in the cybersecurity space, it could be in the analytics space, it could be in the IoT space. We have something called a digital radar, where we map out the kind of areas that we want to explore. So we're doing some of that with blockchain as an example right now, and looking at how we can apply that across different processes, whether it be food traceability, whether it be payments. You think about the markets that we're in and some of the economies and currencies. We do a lot with barter. So think about how blockchain could enable a bartering capability without all the contracts we create. So we do it in both ways, but we have to make sure that that innovation doesn't sit at the end. It's got to be embedded into the core, because then we disrupt to the next technology. And so you got to build an organization that's willing to kind of continue to cannibalize itself a little bit, making sure it's got a really good solid operational base so that your business can run, but then iterate in different ways. And we've engaged our business partners with us on developing of those MVPs. We explained to them what an API is. We've democratized and abstracted out our data layer so that you can use APIs to access that data across the whole enterprise and remove it from being trapped in applications. So our operating model, our iterative approach, being present in the startup community, and even in large companies that you can learn from. It's pretty amazing with large companies what they invest in research. So we apply that and then embed that into the products and solutions that we deliver.
I want to switch now to some of the questions that folks are typing in. And I'll start with a first one here. Thinking about platforms and ecosystems, how does Monsanto see Farm Forward platform built by John Deere? And I want to just generalize that to a question to all of you about partnering as a way to accelerate the innovation, but especially as you're trying to develop business models around platforms. How do you start partnering with others that are maybe also developing business models around platforms that overlap with yours, and that tension? We'll start with you, Jim, since the question was original for you, but this idea of developing your platform business model with others.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey for us. First, I would say you can't digitize on the outside unless you digitize on the inside. So don't think you can do this half-baked. You have to think about how you run your internal business the same way you're running it with your external customers. But if you think about agriculture is comprised of many partners in the ecosystem. You have farmers themselves, who are the ultimate customers. You have distributors and dealers. You have hardware manufacturers like John Deere or Case. You have equipment specialists that provide precision planting equipment, et cetera. You have agronomic providers like Monsanto. And it was really important for us that we weren't just developing an app. You know, anybody in Silicon Valley can say, well, I got an app to do X. What they don't have is necessarily domain knowledge, the customer relations that you need to have, especially with growers. They are a hard bunch of people to kind of convince, like, trust me. And so that relationship is really important. And we have a position that says we have good customer relationships, we have good data, but we don't cover all of it. And so when we think about our ag platforms, whether it be smallholders in India or in Asia, or a large platform like climate, we look at what's the partnership of ecosystem we need to build. We need to be connected in the cab. So we actually connect through something called the CAN bus in the cab to collect data real time that we could send to the iPad, goes to the cloud, we can do real-time analytics. But we work with a John Deere case to be able to pull that data with them. And if there's value for the grower, we have a very forward-looking data statement. It's their data. If they want to share it, they can. If they don't, they don't. They own it. And we were very, very specific on that. But then you look at the distributors, you look at the fertilizer companies, you look at the agronomic advisors. We want to build a platform that all parties can come onto, even if it means that somebody else's seat, our competitor, outcompetes ours. You have to be willing to say, if you're going to build a platform, you need competitors on your platform. Now, there is a bit of a race. Who's going to win that? Either you own the platform, you share the platform, or you get on somebody else's platform. But we know we have to have strategic relationships in this ecosystem to be effective. And we believe we're building a platform that companies will benefit from, our growers will benefit from, and they will want to share on. But it's hard, and you have to be at it. We're investing more than our competitors are. I can probably safely say that. But it doesn't mean that's going to get you to the end. But we think about it as an ecosystem. We think about multiple parties, including John Deere, and being on that platform and us being on theirs, and then building the best solutions for our customers. And in this case, it's growers.
So I can just add to
Yes.
a little bit to that. So we have many examples, obviously, where how we partner with many different companies to be in our business. But one specific area is how we interact with the other finance organizations. So one of the key business part of what we have is really we provide auto finance, right? About 40% of our customers get auto finance from us. However, we always been very transparent in terms of what we offer to the customers. So we build a platform where some other finance companies, they're larger ones, Capital One and a number of other ones, they actually leverage our platform, and we make all those offers from all the partners available to our customers. So our customers will have 3, 4, 5 different finance offers, and they get to pick. So to your point, Jim, we're competing with our finance partners, but we're giving the information to our customers, and they get to decide which is the best offer for them. So this is really key.
Which is really hard to do internally in the company. Because if you're a product company, what do you mean you're going to cannibalize my product and put somebody else on your platform? But you have to be really strategic around how you think about it. We actually created a whole separate P&L around our digital platforms. And I think it was Jim Fowler's comment from GE.
Yeah.
They have Bill Rue, who's their CDO, to really grow the customer-facing platform business. Then you got Jim as the CIO, really making sure he operationalizes GE. And I think he described it really, really well. Yeah. So you got to be able to cannibalize your own stuff.
We've got a question that was originally specific to CarMax, but I think you all three have really good insights on this, which is what kinds of outcomes do these multifunctional teams work towards? How do you help structure, if you're going to have this cross-functional team that's going to start iterating with customer involvement and user involvement, what kind of outcomes do you use to guide them without constraining them? So we'll start with CarMax, and then I'd love some insights from the other two as well.
All right, so before I answer that, I'd like to add a little bit more in terms of how we actually evolved our even financing and budgeting process. And
okay.
I saw one of the questions there. So we historically budgeted based on number of projects you want to get done for a year, and we had all this debate with our business partners, and we'll negotiate a certain portfolio, and then we'll get it done. Half of them get it done. So we changed that into more really product teams. Now we're funding teams. We decide how many product teams we want to fund a given year, and what are some of the key business results we want them to achieve, and then we go from there.
So you're funding teams rather than projects.
Exactly. We're not funding projects anymore, we're funding product teams. So that's the key. Now, product teams, in terms of goals, so one example I would give you is this online finance, right? So we had an online finance product team, and their focus was to drive certain percentage incremental traffic to our site, and then certain percentage leads to the stores, and certain percentage conversion of those leads. So those were the metrics, business metrics they had. So every 2 weeks, they're presenting how much progress they're making, what are some of the things they learned, what are some of the things they tried and didn't work, and then we had open house. And these open houses, basically means open. Anybody can show up. And this product team, anywhere from 7 to 10 folks, sharing the information of their successes and failures and learnings. And they've gone through the iteration, right? Over the few months, we got to see how that thing can evolve. And eventually, we were able to roll that out to the whole company. And we did see they exceeded the original target they had set out for.
Cool.
And the product is far superior than what we had originally envisioned. So that would be an example.
That's great.
So, it's interesting to listen to how you restructured the organization and put people together in teams and things like that. And then I think about Topcoder, and we blow up that model 110%, right? So the majority of the work gets done from every country around the globe, and our teams are made up of experts that normally won't work together ever again, right? But we make it work by targeting expertise. Right, and our model is definitely different than most, but if you think about it, our goal is, let's find somebody that knows how to solve this problem, has inherently, worked on this type of project before, can solve it more efficiently, and if you have a big enough pool of people, you can usually find that. But it isn't that simple. So for instance, we do a lot of work with another institution close to here, Harvard, on genomics, and often what we find is that the real innovation is coming from people outside of that industry, right? Mathematicians or data scientists that apply what they've done in other industries to problems. And it's not a every once in a while phenomenon. It's just about most of the time, where the true innovation that we find is coming from different areas. So, in our business, it's how do you, pull together those people? How do you pull together that expertise to create real outcomes? And then I'll just kind of touch on the core team of Topcoders, the employee base. We're 100% virtual. So we have offices we can go to, but we are on video chat on a daily basis. That's how we communicate. But it is 100% virtual. And we've been that way since 2014. And I would say that the majority of the people would never go back, right?
Yeah, our journey, it's amazing when you talk to a business partner that has never heard of a minimum viable product or Agile or Scrum. Yeah, I'll try it. And then you get your first iteration. Well, wait a minute, it only has one feature. I need these other 500, right? And so there's a change management and a culture component of that that you have to be in for a little bit longer than that first or second sprint. Yeah. And they're used to the old IT model. Well, I'm going to go talk to you for 2 months and do this 4,000-page spec, and I don't talk to you again until 6 months later, and then we're going to go testing on a product you don't use and it's obsolete before it started. So there is a cultural change that we've had to instill, and I continue to remind my business partners the insights that we get, you wouldn't have gotten it any other way, and now all of a sudden, now we can pivot and iterate based on what we're learning. But there is a change curve that's involved with that, but what's actually helping is they're now part of that journey. They're part of, let's imagine a different future. And I spent a lot of time with our executive VP of HR around the skill sets we need to embed into a manufacturing person, supply chain person, a commercial person, a marketer, a research person. I don't think it's going to be too long before, if you don't have some basic data skills and technology skills, I don't think you're going to be viable in the marketplace. And so we actually can be an influencer of those in our companies around building that skill set for those roles that will not only benefit, but they'll accelerate. And what we've seen happen now is there are ideas, we have more ideas than we can possibly consume, but they're now part of shaping a new future that nobody could have envisioned a few years ago. And that's what's been the magic and the excitement around this. And now we're just trying to keep up. But it has been a cultural change, and depending what part of the organization you're in and how you're positioned, you have to understand that that's a big part of this curve you have to think about and address, because you could be shot before you really get it off the ground, and that would be a bad day.
So one more question, and then is with regards to, it was specific to CarMax, but I'm going to open it up to all of you because I think you all deal with this challenge. How do you keep the core technology and website running while innovating through product teams? Is there any tension in between these two? How are they managed?
So in our case, going back to the very first slide you had, right?
Yeah.
So the investment mix, the portfolio mix.
Yeah.
So we actually spend initially a lot of energy and time in rebuilding our platform. Because our original platform was not very robust and it was not scalable. It was built on really old technology. So we re-platformed it. So since we re-platformed, now our focus is a lot more on the innovation and the customer-facing activity. So that allowed us to do a lot of innovation quickly. Now, we use DevOps practices, right? So DevOps team is one of the product teams that's really focused on keeping the platform running while the innovation is taking place by the other product teams.
Okay. Jim, how do you manage the tension between all these innovation efforts that you described versus, really making sure the core?
Yeah, we've been around for 100 years in many different businesses, so we have technical debt out the wazoo, and a lot of legacy. I know nobody else has that problem. So there is always a challenge and a balance. How much can you re-platform? What can you containerize to kind of insulate it, and you have a legacy path until your new products are coming in. And of course, everyone wants to work on the new cool stuff, and they don't necessarily want to do some of the operational stuff. And so we made a conscious decision around our operating model, what roles we needed for both, what we would source versus what we would internalize, and then globalize that. And so we're very clear on here are the roles that we need inside the company. And we go after those roles, and we have a whole, you can go to our IT home page environment or Yammer page or wherever you want to go, the different channels we have. Here are the roles, here's what a product specialist does, here's what a platform engineer does, et cetera. And these are the roles that we're investing in. And then we're saying for the roles that we need services, we have service leads that work with partners to manage and maintain those environments as we work through platforming it. And if we have an issue in a supply chain system, that's all hands on deck. We have to remind ourselves that we got to create revenue. We can't disrupt our business. We have to make sure that our customers' needs are met. So sometimes they're flipping a little bit until we can re-platform some of those assets. But we have a pretty aggressive plan to do that, but we do live in both worlds, so we have to make sure both are sustainable. But our operating model really enables that. And as we've been going through a maturity curve, it's one thing to put a model in place, then you got to give yourself time to mature it. Yeah. Because the best ideas in paper always have some missing points when you actually execute. So you got to be prepared and nimble to be able to say, okay, what did we miss in our model? What do we need to shore up? It might be a partner, it might be a knowledge transfer you didn't do, it might be you're moving too fast in a certain area and you haven't thought about the business being ready, whatever it is. So you got to be monitoring both sides on a regular cadence and then adjust and adapt your model as you learn. But that's been the journey we've been on.
And just tell me a little more about that cadence, because this is a real tricky part. How often do you review and reflect on, is this a right fit? Do we need to retweak how we approach this? Yeah. How often does that happen?
So I've been with the company a little over 3.5 years, and I tried to run it as it was for a year. And this isn't working. I kind of made a joke with my organization where we had a metric that said, this year we're going to reduce avoidable outages. These are things, human errors, by 50%. And have you had to put a metric up in front of your whole organization about reducing human avoidable outages? It was kind of an interesting eye-opener for my organization. So we pivoted over that next year into the operating model that we had around our product platforms. We create what we call digital foundation, which is our infrastructure core, security, cloud and hybrid compute, our network at scale, et cetera. And so we've been running this model for about 2 years. Give or take. And we went through managed services to our commodity things that we wanted to be outsourced, a lot of our legacy, and there was knowledge transition pain with that. But we continue to look at it. We look at it, we monitor, we see what partners are working well, we look at we move people into new roles, and so there's gaps there. And so we've done a lot of ways of working, so helping employees to work in a different way, in a different model. Done a lot of education. We work with Coursera and others to give online training to enable it. And then I have a strategy part of my review every month, and I have an operations part of my review with my leadership team every month. And that gives us kind of the bellwether of how things are going and where we need to pivot. And where I sit in the business also, I have, they're not shy giving me direct feedback on a regular basis. When things aren't working well, they'll remember it for the next 3 years. If things are working, or if they're not working well, they'll remember it for the next 3 years. If they are working well, I get a nice attaboy, but then they forget it immediately. And so that's just the nature of the roles that we're in. But we use those mechanisms to kind of assess and stabilize. But we also, since we're tied to outcomes, even though there's no organization not going to have issues, but the outcomes that we're generating and the impact that we're having is far greater than the issues that we're seeing, that we've earned the credibility. They understand we're transforming. They understand why we're doing it. They see the benefit when we engage in the right way, and they're patient to help us clean up the legacy that we need to clean up. So there's no secret answer, I think. It's just hard work and a lot of focus, but with it, you can get there. Yeah,
I'll just add a couple of things to what Jim said. I agree with you, Jim. I think the one big part is getting your senior leadership team, executive team very much on board for the need of that you got to continue to pay the technology debt. Because if you don't, you're going to be back again where we were, right? So 3 years ago, we found ourselves that we're not able to move fast because we had a lot of legacy and tech debt we have accumulated. What we're doing now in a lot of the new platforms we built, we actually have a discipline focus around certain percentage of our DevOps activity is really taking care of the platform. Okay. So we're keeping track of the tech debt, and we're actually going aggressively and making sure we don't fall too far behind. Okay. And that's a big part, but in order to do that, though, we have to make sacrifices. The features that they want, we cannot really do. But that's okay. As long you can get away with it, as long as you have that strong partnership from the senior leadership team, because they know if we don't do this, 2 years from now, we're going to be in a bigger trouble.
I would say, like, you're never going to get rid of your technical debt, right? Even we have technical debt, and we're a technology company. We're relatively new. We certainly don't have your level of technical debt, but CI/CD, DevOps are tactically, how to manage that. Those are more important roles now than they ever were in the past. But our strategy for managing technical debt, or basically how do you be a catalyst for digital innovation, is APIs. So it is driving your business based on APIs. And I think that's, one of the reasons why, Amazon has done so amazingly. They've always focused on platform and APIs. And, if real innovation happens where you don't expect it, if you provide APIs to things. And we see that from our internal teams. We see that from the way our customers use our platform. We see that from the way our community uses our platform. But it's all enabled by well thought out APIs. And a lot of our APIs, underneath the hood, there might be a system that isn't bright and shiny, but the API is.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. We've absolutely taken that approach. That's how we've democratized our data, is through APIs. But that's also been a learning curve. So building security into your API versus I built an API and let's make it sure it's secure afterwards. Or fault tolerance. Well, the database goes down. So is it a stateless object or stateful? And so you're thinking about how you engineer your organization, especially if you're not developing commercial software. You got to take the same practices and principles because you're running a multi-billion-dollar business off of those assets. So, but that's been a tremendous value add for us. And we have, in our genomics environment alone, it's a graph database. We have something 1 million API calls a month on that across the whole company. Wow. Security is already built in, the data they need. And just think about in the old model, well, I'm the data owner of genealogy database for germplasm, and I'm going to serve you that data. There's no way you're going to keep pace with that. We could change the underpinning of the technology, but the API is still there and callable, and now it's ubiquitous across all the applications that need that data. So it's just a great example of abstraction, access, and then providing use of the data that goes far beyond what you can even think about because you have a lot of teams now consuming it.
We've got time only for 2 more questions. One is on talent. How well are these 9 to 12-week immersive coding academies doing prepping people for careers in software development? How do they perform on Top Coder platform versus traditional CS grads?
Yeah, I'll grab that one. So, there's no magic button. There's no easy button. There is, in our view of the world, we have a very myopic view being, as Top Coder. We started, the goal of the company was rate every software developer on the planet. So think of a global class rank of developers and engineers across the planet. Our opinion is that you largely get to your full potential around 17 or 18 years old. right? So you can certainly learn more things, and every piece of classwork is going to make you more valuable as an asset. But if you're talking about raw coding talent, the best programs in the world, and you see them on Topcoder, they win the Topcoder Open, they win the Google Code Jam, they win the Hacker Cup. There's an entire industry of competitive programming out there that are, arguably the top developers in the planet. They're young, and it's tough, but that's just how it is. So there's no magic button is my answer, but I do think the coursework is good. I think the fact that they've done a lot of gamification around their platforms is incredibly powerful. But you're seeing a lot of that same techniques being applied. It's like our universities, we have a free offering. Every university can use Topcoder inside of its classes and run Topcoder competitions and give Topcoder assignments on them. And we've always done that, and that'll always be a part of our platform. I think you're going to see a lot of cross between some of these 9 to 12 week courses are going to overlap with engineering students that are at MIT, right? Because they can learn extra skills on the side. I think that's where it's going. Where you get from, you get a lot more from MIT than just learning how to code.
Right. We've had experiences. There's a not-for-profit called Launch Code in St. Louis.
Launch Code?
Launch Code, and it was started by one of the founders of Square. And it takes non-traditional backgrounds, it might be physics, it might be chemistry, it might be arts and sciences, and puts them through a development course, which we actually help sponsor. And we've hired a number of folks out of that, and it's like a 3-month iterative process where they're wrapped around paired programming, and they have a lot of support, and then they work on company projects as well. And we've had some amazing cases of people, 2 cases in particular. One woman, she was actually a bagger at the local grocery store, believe that or not. And another one was, I think he was doing something in the arts and sciences, and I forget what we're in the arts world, that went through this program. We helped sponsor, we actually hired them. And it was a way to get non-traditional talent, but actually make them very effective. And you're also helping the community. You're also helping to build this talent base. One is really supportive in our HCD space, so human-centered design. Another one is in paired programming, and she's really learning to do some good engineering and is highly motivated. And if you don't think non-traditionally, those are resources that you're going to miss. But you can actually tap those and think about the shortage we have in STEM, and especially women in IT. There's something like a 40% attrition rate. Once a woman gets into IT, 40% attrit out faster than men. That's a problem. And so how do we think about that diversity? And some of my best developers are women, and they're rock stars. And they come from non-traditional backgrounds in some cases. So building that ecosystem of talent in any way you can is really, really important.
Yeah, so at CarMax, so we're actually taking it a step even earlier. So we are involved in supporting a lot of the K through 12 computer science education programs. So there's 2 organizations in Virginia called Code Virginia and Code RVA. So we're sponsoring those, we're involved in those. So just promoting the computer science education is so critical, because we have to build a pipeline from there. Because if they don't have enough kids coming out of high school with that level of interest, they cannot really, we're not going to have them in college. Yeah. But what I did find that it's more important for the programmers and coders and engineers to have the desire and the self-learning goal. Because it's not just a training they take. It's really, they have to have that motivation to always learn how to do this thing better and differently. That's more important than number of years of experience and things like that. So
absolutely.
Gamification is a key. I mean, we do that within our company just to inspire, motivate, and create a little bit of competition between the developers, and that's very helpful.
And giving people a podium to stand on, right? Recognizing them. Topcoder profile is, it's worth gold to the top competitors. Yeah. It's a recognition. We tend to think that competition is the way to drive people's performance, and you have to have that profile, or if you're competing against people and people aren't able to see you're winning, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, in our organization with the open houses I mentioned, that happens every 2 weeks. So these open houses, the developers and QA person, anybody right from the product team can present, and those open houses are attended by the CEO of the company and the senior executive team. They attend. So here, a developer who might be out of school, college for 1 year, presenting in front of the CEO of a Fortune 200 company, and sharing what he or she has done and what he learned. It's very powerful.
So final question, because we are out of time, but I do want a final insight. We started this talking about the fact that this digital innovation journey is in uncharted waters. What has helped you most navigate these uncharted waters? Jim?
I think the first thing that I had to do, at least within Monsanto, was frame it. So let's take it from a buzzword and put some meaning behind it. And then the way I describe digital within my own company, there's 5 elements to it. It's relentless focus on the customer, so really understand your customer centricity and journey. Second is business process disruption, not business process incremental improvement. How do you disrupt what you do through data and technology? Third element is the technology itself, so engineering and the solutions. Fourth is data science, so your machine learning, your decision science you're applying to get your insights. The fifth, and which is the hardest thing, is leadership and change management. So how do you actually change a culture of a company to drive towards digital? And when I explained that to our executive team, and then I gave them examples, what do external companies do? What's their profitability when they do it? And what are the ones that don't, and what happens? And then let's translate to how we can operate, whether that be in our supply chain and cost of goods, whether it be net present value of our pipeline, whether it be in our net promoter score and customers. That's actually helped make it real for folks. It gave them terms and definitions that says, okay, I understand that now. Now, how do we go after it and do it? And that's been a real help, but it's constant iterating and driving it.
Mike?
Yeah, for us, you know, it's, we have a role within the company. She's called our storyteller.
Oh.
Okay? And that's a huge role for us, right? So it's storytelling of the successes of the team. Okay? It might just be storytelling internally, but making a story about, hey, did you realize, you know, that so-and-so did this, work-related or not? That is, and we do it for our customers, obviously, and that's a big part of, you know, how you can go in and, you know, tell a story about how somebody did innovation and what the impact was. And it's, you know, it's feel-good content that you like to read. And that was one thing that we did recently. It was really focused on that part of our business. And it has a positive impact to culture, you know, internally. It also has a positive impact to revenue, right? Which in turn has another positive impact to culture.
Very cool.
Yeah, for us, it's really around staying true to why we exist, which is driving integrity and transparency in the automotive industry, used car business. And that's what drives us every single day. And how do we continue to leverage technology to make sure the customers get the best possible experience?
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but please join me in thanking the 3 panelists. Thank you.